On this week's episode, we recap the Oscars, how Amazon plans to compete with Netflix, and what in the world are they thinking when it comes to a Hulk Hogan biopic? What you gonna do when we once again delve into the pop culture cosmos? And we're back with another episode of the Pop Culture Cosmos. This is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. We truly appreciate everyone out there listening to all of our great programs as we cover the realm of pop culture twice a week and so much more on our Pop Culture Cosmos channels and all the great stations that actually air our radio show. But it wouldn't be a Pop Culture Cosmos without my good friend. He is the Hulkamaniac of Humanica Media. You gotta you gotta check it out today on humanicamedia.com, Humanica Media on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and so much more. It is my good friend. It is Josh Peterson. Are you ready to say your prayers and take your vitamins?
In that order? Does it matter what order it happens in? I'm not
Or
good
you
at
could
following
take
rules.
well, you could take your prayers and say your vitamins, but that really wouldn't have the same effect.
Mm, taking my prayers, is that like swallowing my pride?
I'm not going to go there. But it wouldn't be a pop culture cosmos again, but it is going to be another great pop culture cosmos we have for you today. We've got our good friends from Game Source, Tony and Jamie Monroy. Oh my gosh, Stereo Monroy is on the way for you. They're going to talk about a lot of stuff going on in the video game scene, including their thoughts on the latest rumor for the Xbox One, how a new Xbox One is coming along the way. That's not anything new, but what may come along with it as a opening title for the new console certainly is. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to be talking about the latest and greatest on what's going on in the battle royale genre and their thoughts on Apex Legends, PUBG, and of course, the leader at this point in time, Fortnite. But we're also going to be talking about a lot of other great things. Like I said, the Hulk Hogan biopic has been announced, and that it is going to be in production here pretty soon with Chris Hemsworth in the lead role of Hulk Hogan. I've got a lot of things I'd like to say, and I'd like to say about this and my thoughts on it. We'll be talking about that on the back end of the show. Plus, we're also going to be talking about a lot of great things going on when it comes to Stranger Things and Dungeons and Dragons. How popular was it from the television series? Well, we'll tell you how popular it was coming up here in a little bit. But first, my friend, we're going to be talking a little bit about the Oscars. Well, our predictions went awry, and Green Book did win for Best Picture. It won out. I think a lot of people were like on the fence on why Green Book won. A lot of people were not exactly thrilled with Green Book winning because they're not. I guess the perception is it is not exactly the movie. I think that it intends itself to be from a lot of people from a lot of different standards, from a social and cultural standard. Your thoughts on Green Book winning the Best Picture, and I guess just the fact that if this is the case and Green Book did win, what does that say about Hollywood at its current state?
Wait, real quick, the Oscars, that's that political lecture that disguises itself as an award show, right? Is that the one?
Something like that, yes.
No, so my brother saw Green Book and he was actually quite impressed with it, and he's kind of a movie snob. So I haven't seen it, don't know much about it. That's the one with Viggo Mortensen. Is that the one?
The one with Viggo Mortensen, your choice for Best Actor.
Okay, good. Yeah, no, it seems like it's a movie that tries to break barriers, in a more constructive way than a lot of these. It paints people trying to overcome racism and doesn't actually like outline racism racism is not a protagonist in the film. Like it seems like it's something that tries to really break the barriers down. And I think that's good, honestly. It's we need more, because I was telling Brian Kane this. I'm like, it's not so much that the social themes in the movies that bother me a lot of the times. It's the way in which they're delivered, and it sounds like Green Book delivers it pretty well, kind of in the same manner that Black Klansman does, and it is something that is on my watch list. I just haven't gotten around to seeing it. But what are your thoughts on it?
I'm not sure. I'm actually thrilled with Green Book winning because I thought there were better pictures out there amongst what you thought Black Klansman you thought was a really good film. I thought maybe Black Panther could have been picked above it. Although Black Panther, there was a lot of forces for it and there was a lot of forces against it. I know it wasn't actually high on your list. It was actually the highest movie on my list when it comes to the top 10 from last year. Although several of the movies in my top 10 were not even nominated, which to me is quite disappointing that there was not enough vision in actually going ahead and actually getting some of those movies in there, like Avengers Infinity War, Crazy Rich Asians, uh, eh, you know, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Those type of films should have been nominated at least for the Best Picture category and were not. And those I take issue with more than Green Book winning. But it be that as it may, Green Book, I think because of the fact that it of who wrote it, I think that's and how it was developed as instead of the actual story itself, I think it wasn't seen as a perceptually and culturally receptive film that was welcome and embraced in the similar fashion as, say, Black Panther or Black Klansman, which were 100%, which were African American full productions, which were made and developed with, I guess, the full cultural experience. Whereas they see Green Book, I guess the perception with Green Book is that it is not a film that entirely represents factually or faithfully what the division of that era was all about.
So do you okay, so your issue with it is that a white guy wrote it? Is that
I'm
no,
not saying that's
I'm
my
not
issue with it.
trying
I'm
to
just saying
yeah.
it's just the issue. I just don't think it's a good enough movie. Although Mahershala Ali, congratulations to him. He won Best Supporting Actor for his role in Green Book. I just don't think it's a good enough movie compared to the others that were nominated outside of Bohemian Rhapsody, because Bohemian Rhapsody, I'm in the majority of people who thought, well, actually, majority of people outside the voting public, the voting contingent with the Oscars, that it is probably one of the worst Best Picture nominees in quite some time. But that's another issue we're going to get to later here in a sec. But I just think it wasn't a very good movie compared to some others. I watched Vice recently. I thought that was a little too satirical, but I thought still that would be a better picture than Green Book. But to me, I thought Roma and Black Panther were better representatives of what a best picture should be from the list that was gathered there. But I am going to say, in regards to your question, that a white writer writing about this type of subject, I think, took a lot of people in the wrong fashion, the wrong way, and that's why I think a lot of people are upset that Green Book won.
You know, it's weird too because like I think about that type of thing, and that's also a reason like a movie like Cool Runnings can't get made today too, right? Because it represents the white man as a savior type thing. And it's I don't know. So my whole thing is like I don't think that a movie is should be the quality of a movie should be based on the diversity behind it. You know, I think that black people should always have been in movies. Women should always have been protagonists in films. Like it shouldn't be, oh my gosh, look, it's an all African American cast, or oh my gosh, look, it's a woman protagonist. They should have always been there to begin with. And now that that's created this n- standard now where good movies have to have so much diversity behind them when it shouldn't have even been they should have always been represented in it in the first place. And because of that, that's created such a big divide among film critics because you're going to have people who go, Star Wars is a good example. Oh, we got the SJW people going crazy here. You know, that whole debate. And it's, I don't know. I feel like a film should be good based on writing, editing, the message it portrays, the philosophies behind it. There's so many things that make a good movie, but we hinge so much on on diversity when diversity should just be a normal thing. Is that does that make any sense?
That does, and you're right. It should have always been a thing. It hopefully we can get to the point where it's not there doesn't have to be a label as the first as the first this as the most important that must that it's just a movie that people can go and enjoy or the just a TV show or whatever. They're just there's still a lot of landmarks that have to be go ahead that we have to go ahead and cross before it gets to that point. But I welcome the point where if people are just looking at the actors and people involved with the film or people involved with the project and just saying, you know what, that's good work, no matter who made it, and that's pretty much what it is. But I know there's a lot of controversy with Green Book winning, and it only has perpetuated even more so in the hours since its win. So, you know, we want to hear from you. Do you think Green Book deserved to win? I mean, let us know popculturecosmos at yahoo.com. We'd love to hear your feedback or our social media outlets on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Just let us know. We'd love to hear you. Love to hear your thoughts on whether Green Book actually deserved to win the best picture of the year. For me, it just didn't seem like it would be the best picture of the year because I just didn't think it was just compared to some others that weren't nominated and some others that were, that it was just matching the kind of level that it need to go ahead and become a victor. That was my main issue with it. I know there were some other great categories that were also a lot of other great winners as well that a lot of people were talking about. Rami Malek, uh, he won, which was not unexpected when it comes to his portrayal of Freddie Mercury in Bohemian Rhapsody. Your thoughts on why Bohemian Rhapsody is such a beloved movie after what I just said in regards to the fact that critically, from a lot of critics' standpoint and myself, it's just not a movie that's that good. His performance was pretty good, but I've told you I would have loved to seen Sasha Baron Cohen portray the film. I think it could have been portrayed even more, even better.
Okay, so I'm on the fence about that because Sacha Baron Cohen, he wanted the movie more about Freddie Mercury, but the band the songs were more than just him. Yeah, he was kind of
But
the
the movie itself was based more around Freddie Mercury.
right, but from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, but Queen had a lot the other guys in the band had a lot of say behind what parts got put into the movie because they would not give their permission to make a movie about them unless it was more about the band and less about Freddie Mercury. Because I know Cohen's version, he wanted to do like highlight the Freddie Mercury sexuality and all that stuff, whereas in this one they did go into that, but it did not shape the. It was not a huge factor in the rest of the film. Um, you know, it's weird because so this past weekend I've been trying to catch up on the movies that were that I missed at the end of the year. You know, I talked about how I saw Robin Hood and stuff like that. I watched A Star Is Born, and you know, I kept asking myself, what is it that makes a good music movie, right? What is it that makes a good film about music? And I think I haven't seen Bohemian Rhapsody, but from what I understand, like it has all of the elements of a perfect biopic slash music film. Whereas, you know, you have these other movies that have been nominated, like A Star Is Born. A Star Is Born is just it's a musical film about struggling musicians, but it doesn't you know, they're not iconic by any means, and it is just a clear cut from point A to point B type story, and it's everyday struggles in A Star Is Born. Whereas Bohemian Rhapsody really takes the struggles of one individual and highlights all of the things about him that people have come to kind of realize. Oh, so that's what he meant in this song and in this song. So you know, Queen, like "We Will Rock You," "We Are the Champions," like that stuff, Wayne's World, Mighty Ducks, like it's a very has such a huge cultural impact on us if you know if you grew up in the 90s. And I think that's why this movie has such a special place in the hearts because it's people my age who I know have really enjoyed it. So I think that's one of the big reasons that it really checks off all the boxes when it comes to what a good music film should be.
Well, like I said, I wish I had kept your enthusiasm when it comes to Bohemian Rhapsody. I just thought the film was extremely flawed uh, when it comes to the fact it's still overall an okay movie, but when you have two montages within the first, I believe the first hour of the film or so, and then you have the back end, you have the entire recreation of the Live Aid minute per minute, instead of just maybe for narrative purposes, maybe just go ahead and segment it a little bit, or just show the highlights of it, or show some bit parts, important parts of that actual 20-minute 20-minute performance, and bring more narrative in it and structure in it with maybe more Queen or other things behind the scenes that maybe could have just been even more interesting and more helpful overall to the picture. I think that was probably the issue for me, and he did a great job in it, Rami Malek. I think obviously the movie had to center around him. It does center around him, and obviously what was going on with Freddie Mercury, because he was so much a part of Queen, and he was so much of what drove Queen. Even though, like you said, there was so many other contributing factors to it, but in the movie you don't get that sense. You get that sense that it is mainly a Freddie Mercury driven performance, and a Freddie Mercury driven movie, and a Freddie Mercury driven band, that Queen wasn't able to go ahead and really thrive without him. So be that as it may, I understand what you're talking about when it comes to the actual song Bohemian Rhapsody, but it is something that did very well when it was reborn again with the Wayne's World in the 90s and whatnot. I was there when it was made in the 80s, when it first debuted, and also as it has refound a new audience in each successive decade afterwards. So it does have its importance in pop culture. There's rest assured, there's no doubt about that. But his performance was very good. I don't want to dissuade it, but I just think I just when I hear Sacha Baron Cohen and I've seen his performances, and I know that he's thought of in one fashion that he can't do these things, but I feel he has the sheer talent to go ahead and possibly pull something like Freddie Mercury in a fashion that may actually be even slight bit better than what Rami Malek did. But Rami Malek carried what was a okay film, what in my opinion was an okay film. His performance was probably the best thing out of it, or definitely the best thing out of it when it comes to it, because the overall film itself, it's just simply to me, it's a lot like what we saw of Justice League, where another director stepped in and put his 2 cents into it, and there was a little bit of different styles, and you could see the little different styles during the course of the film. You could see where Bryan Singer was had his obviously his footprint and his fingers in the cookie jar when it comes to what was going on with the movie, and then you could also see the parts where maybe it was clear that somebody else was going ahead and behind the actual seat of itself. But yeah, it was just kind of a disjointed picture to me, and I just didn't find it that interesting of a film overall. But his performance was good, I guess, enough to go ahead and garner that type of acclaim. And obviously, he had a lot of momentum going in with the big success of the movie, and it it actually go ahead and is exceeding all the expectations that it had from it monetarily. So yeah, it had a lot of momentum, and obviously it paid off for him. There's also as well one of the big upsets with Olivia Colman in The Favorite, beating The Favorite in Glenn Close. That was something I think a lot of people were very surprised about, even though The Favorite was one of the most well-loved movies out of the Best Picture list. So that was kind of a surprise. No surprise at all with Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse being the best animated feature film. That movie was really, really good, and I highly recommend it out there. In fact, it was one of my top movies of the year last year. Best director, I was right again when it comes to Alfonso Cuarón from Roma. That movie, stylistically and visually, and he also won, I believe, for best cinematography as well. So that movie, from that standpoint, was really, really good, and that's what for me made the movie. Best supporting actress was Regina King. If Beale Street Could Talk. Like I said earlier, Mahershala Ali won for Green Book for best supporting actor. And overall, I thought there were some surprises, but overall, I think it went okay as far as the Oscars are concerned. So we're looking forward to next year and a lot of great performances there. If you have thoughts, once again, on your thoughts on the Oscars, please share it with us, popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. My friend, it's time for me to eat some crow. I tried to delay it as much as I could, but you know what? With the biggest opening so far of the year, it is, well, people like training their dragon because how to train your dragon number 3 did earn the best opening so far domestically here at the box office with a $55.5 million take domestically, which until Captain Marvel comes out, and that's one of the things I want to talk to you about here in a sec. I just thought of that for the show here, the Captain Marvel thing. Your thoughts on, I know, actually, I'm going to save that for another time. Your thoughts on How to Train Your Dragon 3, what's going on with it as far as how well it's thought of. It's actually, like I said, almost $60 million here domestically, and now it's the largest grossing movie worldwide at just under $300 million.
Dude, I'm telling you, man, people got a soft spot for How to Train Your Dragon. It filled that void left by Shrek, and I don't know, like you obviously have a grudge match to settle with How to Train Your Dragon, but
I just Jay Baruchel as the lead characters does not do it for me, man.
he's obviously performed well. Him and Gerard Butler in the last two, they have performed so well that it merited making a third one, and it merited the money that it's made this weekend. So obviously, it has an audience, and the soundtrack is great. The story's very emotional, and Hiccup has a beard in this one. Like you can't. It just looks like a good movie. I feel like you cannot go wrong with this movie, and the fact that they're saying, hey, we had this starting point and now we have the stopping point. How to Train Your Dragon is the last one in the trilogy. Maybe they'll make more, maybe they won't, but that's a lot more than a lot of other animated films can say, right? Because they set out with a starting point for a story and now they're ending it. A lot of animated films just kind of wing it. They go, well, if it does well, we'll make another one. There wasn't an initial there was always an initial plan with How to Train Your Dragon, and I give them props for that because they are rounding out their story. And a lot of kids don't get that ever, with they just kept making more Toy Story films, or Frozen is a good example. Aladdin, how many sequels to Aladdin did we get? And they even like the King of Thieves one was not originally intended to be the last one, So How to Train Your Dragon is doing something that I have barely ever seen done before, and I appreciate that, and I am going to pay money to see this movie eventually.
Well, I hear you when it comes to Toy Story because, as you even stated before, when it comes to Toy Story, when did you see the original Toy Story? How old were you?
I was 6, I wanna say. That
There
was
you
about
go. That case in point, because the fact that you were 6 then, and now somewhere along the way, so many years later, they were coming around to doing a Toy Story 4. So there's a little bit of a disconnect where they're assuming that you're now going to take your kids, adults your age that saw the movie when they were kids, are going to go ahead and do the same thing. And it wasn't a consistent, time over time over time. There's so
right.
many years gap between Toy Story 3 and Toy Story 4, and there was even a little bit of a gap between Toy Story 2 and 3. So,
Well, can I throw a question out at you real quick?
yeah, I mean, we'll discuss that more as Toy Story 4 pops up. But yeah, go ahead with go ahead with your question, my
So,
friend.
and this is a real quick side note. Do you think that if you were a kid, right? Like, okay, your daughters, for example, say they in a big animated film came out, right? And there's a chance that the studio that made it is going to finish the story. Like, say they're like, hey, we have 3 movies planned, and they're going to finish the story while your girls are still young and care about it. Would they rather have that, or would they rather have something like Toy Story that spans, you know, one generation to
Generations,
the next
literally.
generation? Yeah, I'm just curious because I don't have a preference on this. I love complete stories, so I'm just asking from the perspective of a father of 2, or how many you have 2 daughters, right? Yeah, 2 daughters.
Yes, $2. Now
And
there's somebody I didn't know. I mean, my son's older in New Mexico, so he's quite a bit older. So, but yeah,
right.
I don't know if I have any other youngins
No,
out
no,
there.
I mean, like, of the age where they still like this
And
type of
please
film.
don't sue me, as far as in child court, for custody. For all my pop culture cosmos earnings.
It's yeah, so much, yeah. um, but okay, so from that perspective, what do you think your daughters would prefer?
Well, I think they would prefer something that they can see over the course of their childhood so that they retain those fond memories of it. I think there's a disassociation that I know you will have if you want to go ahead and try and experience Toy Story 4 because it's hard to remember that point in time so many years ago when you first saw it at the age of 6. And I agree with you, and that's what I was trying to lead into is that you complete these things within it's best to complete these things within a certain finite period of time so that people have that experience and move on creatively with something else, not try to continuously or after so many years, hey, we've got a great idea to go after 10 years, 15 years to come back in it and go back into the well again. It just doesn't make as good a sense as if you were to go ahead and do it back to back to back, and people have that fond memory of what they were. And if it's just brought back as a maybe 25th anniversary Blu-ray or something special added to it as far as a documentary behind the scenes or thrown at it from time to time, repackaging or whatnot, you could still make it special time in and time out over the course and show it to new generations over and over if you know how to market properly. You don't necessarily have to go back 20 years later and go ahead and bring a new one. But again, we're going to probably delve into this question more as Toy Story 4 hits later this year. So I know it's something that you, Josh, are going to be able to have to. I really want to hear your thoughts on it because I was already an adult when it came to the original Toy Story that came out. So I've seen things when it comes to Toy Story 1, 2, 3, and 4 when it comes up in the same fashion. You are going to be experiencing it in a whole different fashion. So when it comes to Toy Story 4, I really am curious as it gets closer to hearing your thoughts and how it's going to be affecting you and how you're going to be perceiving it going forward. But again, that is for down the road. Right now, it is How to Train Your Dragon 3. It did very well, and I'm eating some crow right now when it comes to the box office is concerned. It did very well, $55 million dollars at the box office domestically. It is now closing in on $300 million dollars worldwide. It looks like a great way to close out the trilogy, so to speak, on a high note. And you know what? You're right. And Alita Battle Angel, it has now done over $250 million dollars worldwide. It may be well on its way to the $500 million mark that you desperately want it to get to. And I think it hopefully will as well. I know you just brought out something for Topic Apocalypse 4 that we'll talk about later in the show. But yeah, it's right now a good time to go ahead and see Alita Battle Angel and How to Train Your Dragon 3 because in 2 weeks, cannot wait, my friend, the real movie seasons begin. The real movie season, in my opinion, is going to begin with Captain Marvel, and like all the box office bets are going to be off and running at that point in time when it comes to Captain Marvel and so much more. So, looking forward to that. Looking forward to a lot of good stuff. But right now, How to Train Your Dragon 3 is killing it at the box office and doing a great job and proving you right. And I'm so happy for you on that. One last thing before we head out
Wait,
on
real is there gonna be a sound effect of crows being eaten in post? Is that that's the plan, right? We discussed this during our pre-production meeting, if I remember correctly. So you guys know that Gerald does a lot of sound effects in post. So just hold him to it. If he doesn't do it, you can send him angry emails at popculturecosmos@yahoo.com.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to get crows, but we'll see what we can do. Maybe vultures, condors.
Maybe like bird noises, but then like nom 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 sound effects, you know?
Oh my gosh. Anyways, we're going to see what we can do. You always ask the impossible for me in post.
I believe in you. You did Double Dragon. I believe in you.
I just saw that on someone's list of one of the worst video game adaptations and also one of the worst special effects movies of all time. And I'm not going to say I actually disagree with either of those options. But anyways, moving on. When it comes to what's going on before we head to the break, I want to also note that the CEO of Hasbro recently at the Toy Fair in New York, which I know a lot of people laugh at and think it's funny, whatnot, but it is the premier toy show in America each and every year. It is very important to what people perceive as far as toys coming up, as far as investors and things of that nature, investors, retailers, what's coming up for the toy scene, which is now a different landscape, which is now an entirely different landscape than before because of the fall of Toys R Us. Hopefully, the rumors of them coming back in some small fashion will come to fruition, but we'll have to wait and see. But for right now, the CEO of Hasbro was so excited to announce that the Dungeons and Dragons beginning set from your old favorite standby Dungeons and Dragons with the Stranger Things theme from Netflix that has done such a great job. That series has done so outstanding with viewers now that it's coming to Stranger Things season 3. Your thoughts on Stranger Things Dungeons and Dragons, how well it's performed, because he recently announced, the CEO of Amazon, that it actually appeared at #1 for toys on Amazon and people couldn't get enough of it. A great way to get back into D&D and a great way to keep on going with the momentum for Stranger Things.
You know what? First of all, I think we need to remove the stigma that Dungeons and Dragons has, okay? It is cool to be a nerd, all right? For all you people listening out there, don't ever let anyone take your nerdness away, all right?
Well,
That is
I'm just gonna say something. For me, it's a little harder to say a nerd or geek because remember, I lived through a time where people were bullied extensively and thought of in negative fashion, both in the form of medium and also in real life, that a nerd or geek, as far as being labeled as such, was a negative connotation. So getting off of that to the point where I've told you before, Salvador Villa from Mario Party Wars freely calls himself that, freely talks about that, and it is, to me, it's awesome that that's the case, but it's just a little bit harder for me to just detach myself and say, you know what, it's really cool to say that, even though I love so many of these pop culture things.
No, I mean, you have a good point because even people who go to, like, Target or Kohl's or Hot Topic buy, they'll buy anime T-shirts or Stranger Things T-shirts, but they still call other people they still kinda bully people, you know? They wear the pop culture stuff, but they still make fun of you if you're too into pop culture. So there's definitely a double standard going on. But when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons, dude, it breaks my heart because it is such a fun game. If you sit around, you play with your friends, like you make up stories, you have a good time. Like if you're of the drinking age, you crack open a few beers and dive into the fantasy realms with your buddies. The possibilities are endless in this game, but everyone looks at it and they go, "Oh, that sounds so stupid," because it has that negative connotation attached to it, and that drives me nuts. D&D is probably one of the most fun times I've ever had playing that with my friends, and I am stoked to hear, and I love that Stranger Things has brought that back to life. I love that they have rekindled a an interest in that type of thing, and I'm curious what the specifics are, how the character builds work. Do you know anything about that? Are you playing as the kids, or do you build your own 80s kid, or what is the setting of this game?
I think the setting of the game is just more along the lines of what you're doing. Because you watch the show, right?
Yeah, yeah, I've seen the show.
And I think it's based off that as far as the parameters, as far as that type of medieval form. I don't think it's based off the kids per se, but it is based off of more off of the type of realm that they talked about in the series.
Okay, yeah, that's what I'm curious because I was just wondering, like, is it, are there government facilities? Are you going into the upside down? What's going on here? And that could be an interesting thing too. But yeah, no, I don't know, do you like I wish that because D&D is like the ultimate exercise of the imagination. And the lack of interest in it these days, though it does have a big crowd, but the lack of people wanting to give it a shot just goes to prove that not a lot of people have imagination anymore.
Yeah, because if you go right now to Amazon and you see it, and there's a lot of things that are going on for it. It is based off of the Netflix original series, and it just goes into the hunt for what is it? The hunt for the hunt for Thistle Hydra, and it does a lot of that type of imagery and stuff that they talked about so much within the realm of Dungeons and Dragons, where you do play. I believe you do play as the you play as this you play as the Stranger Things characters, but you do go against the demigod the demons and the supernatural creatures that you saw within not only what they were talking about within the game, but the actual series as well.
So it's like a weird mashup of Dungeons and Dragons and Stranger Things. So like they have the medieval wizards stuff, but they also have the Demigorgon stuff and all that. Is that what I'm getting from this?
Yes, yes, and there's of course add-on sets that are on the way that will get you even more into the realm of both the Stranger Things world and the Dungeons and Dragons environment and how to play it and how to go along with it as far as from either a dungeon master or a player standpoint. And I think it's a great way to spice up Dungeons and Dragons, which has seen its own rebirth in the past few years as far as something that has become a popular thing to stream, a popular thing to play. I know I'd love to hear you guys again go ahead and on an off note that I probably won't actually end up on being on being on the radio show. I'd love to actually get you guys again to have another session like you did before, and see if we can go ahead and get that on there. I'd love to have that put that on in an audio form because they seem to be doing very well on Twitch.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to convince the guys right now. Actually, I'm shooting out a text as we speak. But yeah, I want to get it. I'm actually super interested in this right now. So thank you for pointing that out to me. Do you have any interest in picking it up and trying it out? Any
Well, I just don't have enough people around me to go ahead and give that a
right,
shot.
right.
With me, it's all about finding the crew. I mean, Jamie's always tied up and whatnot. I was trying to get Modifius to. They said they were going to send me Star Trek adventures, but they never ended up doing because I was going to have see if I could get the guys down there, or yeah, or even give it, or even allow the guys at Mario Party Wars to go ahead and have a session because they do it all the time. I'm trying to get them to go ahead and record one of their sessions, but yeah, that's another story. So okay, let's get back to the three. But I tell you what, Stranger Things, Dungeons and Dragons, which recreates a lot of what went on in season one, and now going forward, a lot of what made it exciting. It's been like I said when it comes to what was said. It's been like what was said within a recent interview by the CEO of Hasbro, saying that it is the number one selling toy right now, currently on Amazon, which is a great sign for not only people that love pop culture but love Dungeons and Dragons. It's really something that a lot of people now want to get back into, which was already going in a positive direction. And for me, it was just a great sign to hear that Hasbro has it. I forgot that Hasbro actually even had the Dungeons and Dragons property. So it's very interesting to see that Hasbro is now becoming the premier toy maker with all the stuff that's going on that they now own or have purchased or developed under their own auspices. So just I remember when Hasbro was the little small kid on the block when it came to what was going on, and Mattel was the big boy, but that's a different story altogether. So it's great to see what's going on with Dungeons and Dragons and Stranger Things. Do you have any pop culture mashups you'd like to see at some point in time?
Oh, geez, that's a so we I don't really play enough board games, to really.
Or any type of, is there something you'd like to see in the form of a video game that hasn't been done or any type of pop culture mashup?
So I would like I know they did Numenera not too long ago, but I would like a version of Dungeons and Dragons that you can actually play with friends over Xbox Live. That would be cool to me.
I know one of the first times my wife and I and a couple other friends got to actually do a four-player co-op hack and slash Dungeons and Dragons game. No, it didn't recreate the role-playing aspects of it, but it was sure a fun hack and slash. I think it was from the PlayStation 2 era, if I'm not mistaken.
Or even like a cell phone version of it, like, that would be cool to me, but no, as far as, like, '90s stuff goes, like, there's not really a lot of mashups that I would want to see as much as I would want to see a lot of stuff from my childhood come back, and then maybe we can see what what they can be mashed up with. Like I love what the guys, the brothers that made Stranger Things. I love what they're doing with the series because they have rekindled that interest in it's not because they're not just cashing in on nostalgia. They're bringing about a an interest in life in years that people weren't alive for, and I think that's a whole other trick in itself. But I mean, just like the reoccurrence of arcades and you know those old action figures, Dungeons and Dragons, like that's the I just want to see some of that culture come back. You know, it's not so much I have mashups in mind, but I just want to see some of that culture come back. But what do you have on your mind right now?
Well, I think probably the thing that I think, I have a small opinion on what we talked about earlier last week when it comes to Anthem and BioWare and all the success that they had previously with Mass Effect and Dragon Age. I'd love to see Mass Effect and Dragon Age come alive with their own type of D&D RPG style set. I know there was some fan-made stuff that was out there, but never anything official when it comes to a starter kit that delves into the Mass Effect or I believe also the Dragon Age type of realm. And I think both of those, well, I'm not sure Dragon Age because I'm not sure how much people have left in as far as in the tank of love for the Dragon Age series. I'm hoping they do. I think they do. But with Mass Effect, I know if it's done correctly in the video game format, I think that whole aspect of what could have been done before and what was approached before, because there were some great novels, there was some great music, there was a lot of great things going on with the Mass Effect realm at its peak, and I could see something expanded onto that with a board game or an RPG like game with Mass Effect that's done officially, and also Dragon Age as well. So I like to see something like that. I think those are two. I know that that's like low hanging fruit, but that's probably the two best things that I could say off the top of my head I like as far as a pop culture mashup is concerned.
Yeah, like okay, so I could see that happening, but it would have to be because my thing with board games is they don't last or they can last long, but it's got to be like especially something pop culture related. It needs to be something everybody's familiar with in order for it to really resonate with them. You know, like if okay, for example, I used to have this Lord of the Rings Monopoly, but when I played it with people, you know, they didn't understand. You know, they purchased Mountain Dew. I'm like, oh, that's a good one. They didn't understand that. They didn't understand the references. So it really like it has to you know, Stranger Things is cool in the fact that it has appealed to so many people. So they do get it. It's a great opening gate for Dungeons and Dragons. So it just be, I guess, the vehicle in which the mashup is delivered.
Well, I'll tell you what, it is doing well right now when it concerns pop culture mashups are doing well right now when it concerns Stranger Things and Dungeons and Dragons. It, like I said, is the number one toy right now at Amazon.com. Just a tremendous amount of success with more add-on kits along the way. So, if you're interested in combining those worlds of Stranger Things and Dungeons and Dragons, when you watch the first season of Stranger Things, catch it today. It's easy to find on Amazon.com, and you'll be able to go ahead and get that and bring some friends over and have a lot of fun playing what for me was one of the best experiences of my early years in playing Dungeons and Dragons. What are your thoughts out there on what we've talked about so far? Let us know. Popculturecosmos at yahoo.com. Also, as well, Pop Culture Cosmos, Humanity Media, and Game Source on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well. Well, coming up next, we've got our good friends Tony Monroy and his dad Jamie Monroy. They're from Game Source, our great friends on Game Source on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You got to check them out today and what they're doing with their streams and all the things that they're doing on social media. They're coming up next, right after the break, when they're talking about what's going on with the video game scene, the new Xbox, and what they think is going on along the way, and then also what's going on in the Battle Royale genre. Their thoughts coming up right after the break. This is this is the Pop Culture Cosmos. And we're back to close out the show. It's the Pop Culture Cosmos. If you need a listing of where we're at, because we're being played all around the world, 7 days a week on great and awesome truly awesome radio stations. Check us out today. Check our listing out today at Pop Culture Cosmos on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. It's right there for you, easy to read. And if you have any questions, you can also email us popculturecosmos at yahoo.com. But also, it has a great amount. It also has a lot of listings for our podcast options, just some of our many different podcast options as well. My friend, my friend, you've got a great thing going on with my friend. You've got a great thing going on with Humanica Media. So share the goods, my friend. What's going on with Humanica Media?
We just Topicocalypse just put out a review of Alita Battle Angel, so you can check that out now. It's about the cast is about 45 minutes, but the first 10 minutes has some ranting in it, so just be prepared for that, or you can fast forward. But yeah, we go in depth. We give our thoughts on the film, what we thought of the acting and the performances, the story, where we'd like to see the next one go if it makes the money, and it was actually a pretty decent conversation for us, which is weird. So check that out now on Podbean, iTunes, Spotify, all the usual places.
That is Topicocalypse. You got to check it out today on, like you said, all those different great podcast options. My friend, before we head on out, I told you I had something to rant about when it comes to the movie industry, and that is the recent knowledge that's come about with Chris Hemsworth ready to take on the role of Hulk Hogan in an upcoming biopic that's going to be filmed. Before I go ahead and say what I need to say on this, let me hear your thoughts, man, or excuse me, let me hear your thoughts, brother, on what's going on with the Hulk Hogan biopic. Do you think this is a good idea? And what areas of his life do you really want to know more about?
You know, I feel like this movie is going to make Chris Hemsworth a laughing stock.
Well, we've always discussed how he doesn't seem to go ahead and find those good roles or prosperous roles outside of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and this does not look like it's going to be another one of those. It does look like it's going to be another one of those options.
Yeah, it is a movie that nobody wants to see. You know, it's gonna be one of those things. I think they're seeing all these biopics come out, and they're hoping that maybe this one will catch fire like the rest of them. But it's just not a movie I think people are interested in seeing. You know, because he has had there's enough of his life out there on the internet that there's not any need to rehash it. You know, in a movie, we've seen the what's that VH1 show where with Hulk Hogan and his wife. We've seen all that. We've read about him in the papers. We've followed him through WWF, seen all the behind the scene documentaries, and there's just no reason to make this movie. And also, you know, we're discussing this before the show. A lot of people, it's going to appeal to people, you know, in their 40s, you know, and maybe beyond that. Because for me, like I just, you know, I'm 30 and I started watching wrestling after Hulk Hogan was famous. My only memories of a kid of Hulk Hogan is that Three Ninjas movie where he was Three Ninjas High Noon at Mega Mountain. That's my only memory of Hulk Hogan as a kid. And so like I
I'm so sorry.
Oh, dude, that movie does not the Three Ninjas franchise does not hold up, by the way. But I just don't care. I don't want to see it. I don't care about it, and I am curious why it seems like this type of movie is slumming it for Chris Hemsworth.
Well, I just to me, first of all, can he recreate the voice? Because Hulk Hogan has obviously his humped up brother while he does his interviews and the Hulkamaniacs and all la 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 when he's talking about that, but then he has this low voice, brother, when he's talking about in his normal backstage voice. He has this lower octave that's completely different than his amped up Hulk Hogan to the 10th power type voice. Can he do the dichotomy of those two different type of voices behind Terry Bollea, aka Hulk Hogan? So that's the first thing I have in mind. Second thing is, there's when you're talking about a biopic, biopics usually cover individuals that have severe high and lows. Some of it's imposed, some of it's not, some of it's tragedy that was put in there and made tragic due to certain events and not always self-imposed. When it comes to Hulk Hogan, his highs and his lows were self-imposed and were done. Hulk Hogan was actually the starting off of his character, the Hulk Hogan character that was made famous, originated a lot of it in the AWA, and obviously garnered a lot of steam once he quickly transitioned over into the WWF at that time. And that's what he really got him going. They gave him a full head of steam, and gave him the title right. Really gave him the title right away once he returned back to the WWF after being a bad guy many years before. He started off, like I said, with his character, the Hulk Hogan character everybody knows, really in the AWA, got it really rolling in the WWF, where it was something with the rock and wrestling connection that garnered the type of mainstream publicity and attention and audience that Vince McMahon and the WWF were hoping for. And he did cross that threshold of celebrity into that realm. And he achieved a status which only a couple other individuals, or maybe on one hand, has actually ever crossed through, in The Rock, Steve Austin, and maybe just a couple others at the very least. Maybe Ric Flair, possibly, you could say that. John Cena, that one you could debate all day long on his impact, both culturally, as far as from a wrestling and also outside of wrestling standpoint. But I don't want to digress on that right now, so that's another issue entirely. But when it comes to what Hulk Hogan did, his tragedies were never something that came out of left field, or something that really, to me, seemed like something that he didn't impose on himself. The George Zahorian trial, when it dealt with steroids, a lot, steroids is not something he was, maybe peer pressure, you could say, whatnot, but he didn't really have to go ahead and bulk up like he did with the steroids. That was just something of, everybody was doing it, so you felt you had to go ahead and do it too. So that obviously was something there. The admissions that he had to make during that course of time, during those court proceedings, his his fall from grace, when you were talking about after his career was over, he had gotten a successful rebirth with the NWO, but his fall from grace, when his subsequent divorce from his wife after their reality show, which I don't know what you want to say about the reality show. To me, it wasn't worth watching, but unfortunately, to a lot of people, it was for a little while. And the things that he did to create controversy, and all the shameful things that he said afterwards in the latter years of his life, the sex tape and the whole nine yards, when it comes to what he was doing with the latter stages of his life, these were all things that were self-imposed. His successes, a lot of it was him. It wasn't Vince McMahon pulling the strings. A lot of it was him going out and being able to garner that audience. And that's one of the best, some of the best success stories that you have in pro wrestling, is when someone takes a character and brings it to himself and makes it so much a part of them that they're able to go ahead and transfer that image so successfully out to the media, out to a wider and general audience than anything else ever seen before in the industry. So he gets a lot of props for that, but he also gets a lot of shame for what he did, as far as some of the things he said and some of the things he did. Because doing steroids was something that, even though that was the lifestyle back then, and the drugs and all that, that's something that he ultimately decided upon doing himself. And the stuff that he said in his later years that caused a lot of shame to him, and that caused the actual WWF to disassociate themselves from him for many, many years, was brought upon by himself. So his story to me is not, how should I say, his story to me is not interesting enough behind the scenes to go ahead and warrant a type of movie that I think is going to encapture correctly. I think there's going to be a lot of Hollywood liberties that I'm not going to be happy with. I wasn't a big Hulk Hogan fan at all in the early stages of Hulkamania. I was those people that loved the industry from another standpoint, a technical standpoint, or an image standpoint, that I could not really stand Hulkamania and its cartoonish type of references and style of wrestling that I just really opposed of. And to me, I enjoyed his character as Hollywood Hogan when he came back in the '90s, and his rebirth, and his part in the NWO. That part I really liked, but the overall lifespan of what Hulk Hogan is to me. I eventually knew that was I knew eventually a movie was going to be made, but I just don't think it's going to be one that I really think needs to be told. And I couldn't agree with you more on that.
Well, okay, so, Hulk Hogan has a story, like, he has a comeback story similar to, well, I guess I could say Steve Austin has a comeback story similar to Hulk Hogan's, but it
Now, how
seems
so? I want that. I want to hear how so.
because if I remember correctly, he had some allegations too where, like, I don't know if it's steroids, I think it was,
No, it was spousal abuse, I
spousal
believe.
abuse, yeah, so, like, I just feel like as far as redemption goes, like, Steve Austin is more worthy of a biopic than Hulk Hogan is, and he's more relevant, so and
I
he
would
ha
actually think Ric Flair would probably be the best
Ric
biopic just
Flair would
because
be, yeah, I agree.
you
Woo!
would see some yeah, what was that?
Woo!
There you go. I'm telling you, that story would be wild, would be crazy. The behind the scenes stuff, I would love to even know more about because I know a lot and have read a lot and studied a lot about what's gone on behind the scenes with Ric Flair and obviously the decision making things that went on into all of his title reigns, the times he's actually led the individuals as far as from a creative standpoint and obviously heard some. I don't want to say all because I'm sure no one's heard all of the crazy stories that he's done behind the scenes because that man has lived a wild life. But that to me, I think would be an even better biopic than what Hulk Hogan could ever be about.
Do you know, while we're on the topic of wrestling biopics, I would love to see a Vince McMahon biopic because I hear that he's a nice dude behind the scenes, but he explodes, and I would love to just dive into that. I would love to see what's going on with that.
I think there is one. Let me make sure there is one. Yeah, I think there is one. It's called Pandemonium and it's landing at TriStar. And that was as of 2017. So
Oh,
I
nice.
don't know what stage of production it is in, but you're right. Talk about someone who has also done a lot of self-imposed highs and lows. He's obviously should get a lot of credit for putting the professional wrestling and sports entertainment industry at a very unique high that it's received in many occasions. But he again he helped self-perpetuate this idea that you needed to be big during and huge during the late 80s, early 90s. Obviously, the steroid trial really hurt him and what was going on as far as his own demons that he had to face. But you're right, his story would actually be interesting from a behind the scenes perspective. But I don't think you're going to really know all that you need to know about what's going on behind the scenes because I think a lot of that is just off limits. And I think there's only a few individuals out there that are really going to get exactly everything they want to know or everything that they do know about what went on behind the scenes at the WWF, WWE when it comes to Vince McMahon. I'd love to know more about the Montreal Screwjob, the real story about that, because there's so many different there's so many different types of opinions and views on what went on there. There's so many things you could discuss when it comes to Vince McMahon. I think that would also be an extremely interesting biopic. Again, like I said, it was landing a TriStar, as I see, of 2017. Whether or not it's going to come to fruition, I'm not sure. And in fact, when it comes to a Hulk Hogan or a Vince McMahon biopic, I want to know, is it going to get the full entire blessing of the WWE? If it doesn't, especially on the Hulk Hogan end, I think that's going to be a serious problem.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I imagine Hulk Hogan has something to do with this as
But
he's
yeah, in regards to his character, he retains the rights because Hulk Hogan was able to go ahead and retain his character. In fact, he even fought Marvel off on a naming rights issue. But what I'm saying, as far as some of the things that went on within the WWE realm, if WWE doesn't give its blessing, to some of the creative liberties with Hollywood and a Hulk Hogan biopic will have to be even more broad because you didn't get the blessing from WWE. Because I haven't heard WWE films being associated with a Hulk Hogan biopic as of yet.
Yeah, that would be interesting to me. I'm curious how the licensing would work for that. But like I said, man, this is definitely it's not something that I'm going to watch personally, so I don't really have a stake in it.
Unfortunately, I will probably have to watch it just because of the fact that pro wrestling has been a great portion of my life from my early years as a kid. So I probably will have to watch it, possibly suffer through it. And that leads to, like you said, a bigger question on what's going on when it comes to Chris Hemsworth and why he cannot connect with an audience outside of the Thor, outside of the role of Thor. But that again is another issue entirely for another day. You know what? We'll probably bring that up when Men in Black International comes around and see how that goes from there. What are your thoughts out there on the Hulk Hogan biopic? And what wrestler biopic would you like to see? Share us your thoughts, popculturecosmos at yahoo.com. Also, as well, Humanica Media on GameSource, Humanica Media, GameSource, and Pop Culture Cosmos on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well. You know, Rock would be a great one. Obviously, he at one time he had the great of football success. His success initially was not there when it comes to the professional wrestling scene. His would be a great biopic. Mick Foley would be a great biopic, but we want to hear your thoughts as well. What would be a great pro wrestler biopic? My friend, it's been a great episode. I just want to go ahead and thank one last time our good friends at GameSource, Tony Monroy and Jamie Monroy, for appearing on the show and talking about the video game industry, the latest and greatest on the video game industry. Your thoughts on the way out as we head into another great week of pop culture, my friend?
Oh, shoot. I had something I was gonna say, and then oh, yeah, so I was watching, I started watching Dragon Ball Super Broly, last night, and it's pretty good, man, but that's a conversation I would like to have further on down the line 'cause, a lot of people are catching a lot of themes in it that I had never even stopped to think about just over the whole course of, what Dragon Ball Z is, so I would love to talk about that sometime.
I'd love to ask you, could that actually be the best video game movie of all time?
Yeah, no, it is because it actually has like so there Brawly has never been canon before. They completely rewrote the Dragon Ball timeline to fit him into it, and it's very good. It's not over the top. There's not a lot of like tropey anime stuff, and it still has its funny moments, like the typical Mr. Satan stuff. But like it's a genuinely good movie. Like I am surprised at how much I am enjoying it.
You know, we didn't even talk about Amazon, but maybe if you're up to it, we'll go ahead and check in this week with thoughts on Amazon's future and how they want to match up to Netflix. We'll go ahead and maybe put that on a PCC extra coming up this week and some other great things as well. So for Josh Peterson, this is Gerald Glassford. It's another beautiful day in the pop. It's another beautiful day right here in the pop culture cosmos. We thank you for listening. And here's hoping you have yourself a great day.